Hey, how is everyone?
Happy Thursday!
Happy Thursday. We got an awesome topic going on today. We're going to be talking about emotional storage units.
Yes, emotional stuffing. How full are you?
So, basically, the reason why we're doing this, I released a blog last night on this whole concept, and Judy and I thought, why don't we kick that off? So, we'll start with that, but first, we are SessionWell. You can find our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play. Why would you want to listen to us? I guess I'll start, or do you want to start?
You can start.
Okay, why do you want to listen to us? So, I am an associate marriage and family therapist. I have been doing this for 5 years now. That's kind of crazy.
Oh, wow, okay, me too, yes.
And I'm a therapist. I work with clients. Currently, I'm full-time in substance abuse, but I also work out of the Hope Counseling Center in Anaheim. And we wanted this podcast because, A, we wanted to start out helping other people who are pre-licensed, give you a platform on some of the interventions we're using, maybe some of the thoughts that we're going through, the experiences. Also, we wanted to be a place for the licensed individuals. And then the triple threat, we want to be just a resource for the everyday person. So again, everything we work on, whether it's clinical or not, you can implement with your kids, with your husband, spouse, partner. Everything works with that.
Yep, and for yourself too, a lot of it is relational but also individual. And kind of going off a little bit more about just like why we're here. I think that we originally started in private practice together, and I think that in private practice we felt really isolated and really alone. And so I think that we were drawn to just be like in community together, and so we've created SessionWell because we don't ever want anyone to ever feel isolated or alone in this journey, because it can be a very difficult process. And so we've just provided this space for us to be able to communicate, support each other, walk through life together. And so we would love for you guys to join us. For those of you that have already, thank you. And so we just hope that we can continue doing this every week, and that we can continue to build this community. A little bit about me. I'm Judy Yen. I'm also an associate marriage I can't remember what I am. I'm like really tired this week. I've worked a lot. I'm an associate marriage family therapist. I am also a full-time high school teacher. I also am an adjunct professor at Hope International. I also see clients at Hope Counseling Center. And then I'm also in private practice with CAF Family Therapy. And I see some clients there. So those are kind of the hats that we all wear. And so we're just really excited for you guys to join us today.
Yeah. So, we'll roll right into it then?
Sounds good.
Okay, so emotional storage units. You had asked me a little bit before we started, like, how did you get onto this thought process?
Because to be honest, I saw his post last night, and I think I read it this morning. And so right away I was like, hey, like, do you want to change what we're going to talk about tonight and actually talk about your blog post? Because it's actually, like, really relevant, and I actually think it's, like, something that's really good to talk about. So we decided to do that. So
Perfect.
I'm more just curious, for people that haven't read the blog, like, what is it about and kind of what led you to write it, I guess.
Okay. So what led me to write this was actually I had an experience over the weekend. I got to spend some time with my dad. We love to go fish and do some stuff like that. And he has a storage unit that's got all of like his outdoorsman stuff in it. So we happened to be down there, and I realized as we're sort of hunting through his storage unit, I look across and I see this other storage unit. It's twice the size of my father's, and it's so packed that the people can't get the door all the way up.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, and just to be nice, it wasn't like really nice stuff was in there.
Okay.
It literally looked like if you had just taken a truck from the dump and just pushed it as hard as you could and made a square box out of it.
Oh my goodness. That's
what they had. And so I ended up asking, like, how much does a spot like that, what's that space cost? It's like $300 because of how big this space was. And it just got to me, when you look at storage units, and I think anyone who has had one for themselves knows this, like, whatever you put in that storage unit that's past the first foot,
right,
you're probably never going to see again.
That's kind of true, yeah.
And I really noticed this also, my background, people don't really know. I used to repo houses for a short period of time.
Oh, that's great. I think I knew that. I don't know.
So it was how I got my AA.
Gotcha.
And we would do these storage these storage units at the same time. And what was crazy is, again, what people would continue to pay through life, basically, to store, yet they never came back for any of this. Or what really hit me is when maybe that person passed away, their relatives didn't even come for this.
Right.
And so, going back to, I'm pretty much, I work best off of metaphors. And if you've ever had me for
really
therapy,
good.
I use metaphors. That's just, I'm a visual person. And so, going back to these storage units, I thought to myself, man, what am I packing away in my own life emotionally that I'm not dealing with, or I've told myself I've dealt with it? Because, also, you'll have individuals who, you have a beautiful home, but you'll get a storage unit and you'll put stuff away in that storage unit, right? And it keeps your house clean, but you still have that worry, that financial liability, whatever, in storage, right?
It's not gone.
It's not gone.
It hasn't disappeared.
And your anxiety is not really gone about your stuff, right? You've just found somewhere else that's out of sight, out of mind. But you still have to deal with it one way or another.
Absolutely. And it still affects you because the payments are being made every month.
Exactly. So going back to how I sort of see emotions, I look at them as an emotional currency, right? I have a finite ability of what I can hold and do with my emotions. So I have an emotional piggy bank, right? So how am I depleting what I get? Because again, mental health and to some abilities, just your mental fortitude is a finite resource, right? If you run yourself to the ragged edge, you will probably not be able to take on experiences and unforeseen bills or complications in life, if you don't have that resource built up. So again, every day you start off the day paying for emotions that you may not be using or you haven't stored correctly.
Right.
And so like what I think about in this is I think of, if you know me, you know I've done a lot of trauma work. So I think of the traumas. I think of poor attachments. Poor, attachments are basically security and, secure attachment in relationships.
Right, and attunement.
And yes, and so we have all these events that sometimes we can tell ourselves, well, they're a singularity, they're one thing, so I'm going to put it in this box, I'm going to put it away.
Right.
But it's not true because the box fills up and then you got to find a storage unit and you got to do all this and it's all still there. Now, I've also heard from friends and experienced this myself of like when you want to go to your storage unit and you think of something, you're like, I really want to get this out.
Right.
Maybe it's your Christmas box, right? Or your fall box or whatever, because my wife's got a box for every season. But anyways,
we love Joe.
Yes, I love my wife to death. It's just hysterical. When you're single, you're like, I don't need a box for
every season.
My Christmas, fall, and summer box is called a wardrobe, and that's it. So I don't have any extras. But anyways, what happens is you can't get to the things you want, right? And so true. In life, it's the same thing. Like I can stuff all this away, but it's not so easy to do retrieval. Because maybe the holidays have taken on a bad feeling in your heart, in the center of you, because of attachment issues, because of relational issues.
Right.
And so that's why I wrote that post, was because sometimes in life we have to process things. We have to be very intentional about it. I've experienced this. But then we let it go.
Right.
And I know, I'm going to assume that you are also like my wife, that sometimes you yearly go through your closet and you really like this blouse or sweater or whatnot, but it's not going to work for you going forward. And so you have to get rid of it, or you don't have any more space in your closet.
But I don't get rid of it.
Okay.
I save it. But guess what happens? My closet is ridiculously stuffed. And so when I'm trying to reach for the outfit that I do want right now, I can't find it. Because it's covered in other crap that I keep storing, that I keep saying I might go back to one day.
Yeah.
But I don't actually need it because it's either the wrong size or it's out of style. And so my closet is stuffed with clothes that I should actually get rid of. Just like with certain emotions, or at least I should at least really think about and process, but I don't. So I don't know.
So, like, to just piggyback on what you were just saying there, I can think of, like, myself. I've been trying to lose weight, right? And I've dropped about 35 pounds since last year, so I'm working in the right direction. Well, I had clothes from when I used to be lighter, right? And I was just like, oh, when I lose weight, I'm going to, why would I get rid of these new jeans that don't fit me? But, my wife actually said something that, again, it clicked into mind of, like, the emotional things we store. Mm-hmm. She's like, well, but you're not the same person as you were when you were then.
That's true.
Right? So the clothes that we save for ourselves, and we go, well, I'm going to wear that when we're not the same person. Whether the number on the scale is the same, we're not the same person.
That's true.
And again, we have to relate that to our emotions. Because maybe something that you were going to appreciate in the past, you're not going to appreciate now. Right. Because guess what? You're not that same person. Maybe you're not floral print anymore. Right. I certainly am not, but...
That's okay. Depends on the season.
Yeah, exactly. I generally just look like I'm a couch. But anyways, what we have to go at is, again, why are we storing things that we don't need to?
Right, and like holding on to it. What is preventing us from going back and truly processing some of our emotions that we've gone through? First of all, how do you know when you're too emotionally stuffed? Like, how do you know you haven't dealt with something?
I think that, it's going to be different for everyone, but in my own personal work and in working with clients, I think you start to realize when something extra slides onto your plate. Mm-hmm. So let's say life is manageable. I won't say great, I'll say manageable. You've got this system that works.
Right.
But then maybe there's a loss in the family. Maybe there's a loss of your career. Maybe you're switching careers, starting a new job. It's easy as the car breaks down, right?
It's like a stressor.
Just a stressor. Something pops up. Something hits the radar. And all of a sudden, you feel completely overwhelmed. You feel like you're way over your bandwidth.
Yeah.
You feel like there's no way I can handle this. Your anxiety comes up through the roof, right? I think we sometimes have to really ask ourselves, why am I feeling like this? Why am I feeling like I'm so much at the edge, right? I'm not going to say that life doesn't suck at times, or that seasons are going to be perfect every day if you don't have an emotional storage unit. But what I'm going to tell you is you're going to have the space to take on something for a moment. But guess what? You got to stay true to yourself. You got to take the time, take the space, right? But you're going to go through the box, and then you're going to get rid of it. Right. And sometimes people don't realize that you can have this cathartic release of emotions, situations, narratives, that you can literally do an emotional yard sale.
Oh, absolutely.
And I've brought that up with clients. Like, let's make a list. Let's make an emotional yard sale. What narratives or experiences would I want to get rid of?
Yeah.
And you got to be honest with yourself. Maybe it's, I was a fat kid growing up. You write that down on the list. What are the narratives we're going to take? Maybe I didn't have friends growing up. Right. Maybe at some point in life I felt like I wasn't lovable. These are honest things we got to talk about. They're uncomfortable, and that's why we store them, right?
Yeah, and I don't want to deal with it right now.
No. I'm going to deal with that when I have time.
Yep.
I love it when people are like, I'll do it tomorrow. I have never, ever lived in a tomorrow. I only live in today's. Right. I don't know. My calendar must be different. But it's the truth.
Yeah.
You will never have more space or more time to deal with something than when it's presently staring you in the face.
Right. And I don't think it does anybody any good. I mean, I do think it's okay to put something aside for the moment. But I do think our emotional stuffing can be very unhealthy. Because like you said, like the storage unit, how often do we go back and address those things? And a lot of times when we stuff, usually it's something uncomfortable or vulnerable or painful. And I think that we keep it in this little storage unit for so long that it starts to bleed out in our today. And so we keep saying we're going to deal with it tomorrow, but how do we do that if today is being currently affected with everything we've stuffed? And so I think that as we go through life, we have to figure out, how do we unstuff these emotions? it's okay to put it aside for a minute, but what's a minute? You know, like at what point do we actually handle them? Like, it'd be best to maybe just handle it in the moment or in therapy or with a good friend. But I guess I know for myself, like, I will openly admit I'm an emotional stuffer. And I would say the way I do it, my tactic is by basically working a ton. So I work all the time. And so for me, I'm like, oh, I don't have time because I'm working. And if I unstuff my crap, that means I might come apart. And if I come apart, then I can't do my job well. So then I just kind of put on this facade of like, oh, I have my shit together. I'm working all the time. Like, my stuff's dealt with. Yeah. But then I become depleted. And then if I get an additional stressor, then I start feeling very overwhelmed, highly anxious. I cry. And it's like, that's weird because when I'm in a season where I am unstuffed and I've been healthy, those stressors wouldn't make me feel overwhelmed or cry. Yeah. But when I'm too full, then I'm more sensitive to being overwhelmed.
And I can definitely relate with you on the overworking part, right? So we've talked about this in the past. Judy and I have crazy schedules.
Yes. I don't know why we do what we do, but we do. And we love it, which is crazy.
We do. But we've also had to be honest with each other. Like, even before we did this podcast, we were doing videos pretty consistently. The videos are coming back.
Yeah.
But
they're all stored on my computer.
Yes, they're all stored. But we actually had to have somewhat of an honest conversation with ourselves in a professional capacity of like, Judy, I don't have any more time, or I need a mental health day. There's times that you were like, I need a mental health day.
I don't have energy.
And it would have been, it was better for us to do that than versus like, let's just force it through. But again, it goes back to the, no, I'm going to have time to work on it. Now, don't hear that you have to change who you are. Whether you're because how you are as an extrovert or an introvert also affects how you process information, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe as an extrovert, you can process information out in front of people. You don't have any issues with that. But as an introvert, that's not true. No, you need your space. You need to be at home.
Quiet.
You need to be able to unpack. So again, if you are going through life and a stressor hits you, just like you made that example, it's completely healthy for you to be like, you know what, I do need to process this in a safe place. So maybe instead of going out with friends or whatever you were going to do that night, you go home, you do something where you can recharge, you can process, you can clear your mind.
Absolutely.
Because I think sometimes people also, in our emotional storage units, we think of ourselves, we like to compare ourselves to other people, right? So, well, they deal with their emotional stuff this way, so I have to do it that way.
Right.
As an introvert, trying to follow an extrovert and how they handle their unpacking, their grounding, it is not going to be a good thing for you.
No. It makes me very tired.
Very tired, more frustrated, more stuffed, right?
Yes.
Because it's funny how our bodies work. When our bodies are talking to us, and I think anxiety is a huge marker in our bodies talking to us. But we've been taught sort of as a society to turn that off. Like, oh, no, I've got to do this. I have an obligation to do this. So I feel like I've got it up here, but I'm going to just keep on going. Power through it. No, when you feel that anxiety, sometimes it's the best to sit back for a quick second and go, okay, why am I feeling this? And trust yourself. In that first second, what's the thought that comes to your mind? I feel because what? And a lot of times we've been taught to not trust ourselves.
Right.
Or again, to tough it out, or being stupid, whatever it is.
Yeah.
That is not the case.
No.
And so another metaphor I had used with you, and that you actually said that you used, was the pack, right?
Right, the backpack.
So why don't you share yours for a little bit?
Well, I've used it with like couples and individuals, but I do think that, well, actually mine's a backpack, but mine's also like a Friends episode. So maybe you want to explain the backpack one.
Okay, do the Friends episode, because I love that one.
So for me, my Friends episode, analogy or metaphor you want to call it, is the fact that those of you that watch Friends, Monica, she's very type A, she's very organized, she gives off this appearance that she has everything handled, she does everything. And so I really relate to that because I would like to give off this facade that I have all my shit together and that I can take care of it. And not only can I take care of my own stuff, but I can go out and help take care of my students, my clients, my friends, my family. And so on the outside, I would like think that I look really put together. But then if you literally go into my emotional storage, so like in Friends, there's this one little secret closet in Monica's house that nobody ever opens. And so one day Chandler opens it, and when he opens it, it is like a mess in there. It is stuffed to the brim, and he's like, oh my gosh, like, you're messy. Like, I never thought you were messy. And so for me, I really relate to that because I think sometimes when people like really get to know me, or like if I allow them to really get to know me, like I'm a mess sometimes inside, but just my exterior looks as though I'm put together. I have all these jobs, I have friends, I have family, all those things. But really there are times where my storage unit is a mess. And if I don't take care of that closet, then I can come undone. I can come fall apart. I'm snippy with loved ones. I just lost patience. I cry.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's kind of like what I relate to more. But I also really like your backpack one because I do use it with clients as well.
So I found the backpack version really works really well with all my kids I work with adolescent males, and then with full-on men. And I think what it is the way that I look at the pack is, so I put it into the metaphor that you go for a hike. And in life can very much feel like a journey, so a hike.
Absolutely.
You're walking through, and let's say you go on the trail and you have an experience, so you go ahead and put a rock in your pack. You pick something up, you put in your pack. Well, as you do this for several times, you can get 3, 4, 5 rocks, but then you start telling yourself, like, you know what, the pack's not that heavy. I'm actually getting stronger. I can take care of this. So as you go on through your hike and your journey, you throw another rock in until the pack gets full, right? Now, the reason why at this moment in the hike you're completely good with it is because maybe life hasn't changed that much. But every once in a while, in every adventure I've ever been on, you come to a mountain, right? And so maybe life's taking you in different places. Maybe you don't get as much sleep as you normally would get. Or what I was sharing with Judy is maybe a trauma comes into your life. So I think the easiest way to see a trauma in my life is to say it's a raging river, right? So you come to this raging river, you've got this pack now that's 60, 70 pounds, and you're not sure what you're going to do. Right. And so you have no choice but to go through the raging water. And as you go through that water, what is it like when you have all this weight? Now, granted, some of the rocks were good. Some of the rocks were good memories. But you also need to make room in that pack for whatever shows up.
Exactly.
Because if all you're carrying is rocks, you don't have any room for food, any room for tools, anything that will help get you through your experience and your adventure. And so, again, you start just pulling rocks out. And it's not something, again, I think the more damaging way is to when we reach a point and we go, none of these rocks matter to me. And you just dump it out and you move on, right? But we leave a lot to be processed.
That's true.
We don't grieve the experiences that we've gone through. And I think that's also something that's different for people is I'm going to grieve stuff that I shouldn't really grieve. And, it hit me this way. 8 months ago, I got a job that I really wanted. That I had really thought to myself, this is the job I have been waiting for. Right. I got in, I was working with clients, I was like, this is an awesome job. And my dream or expectation of what it was going to be ended up being drastically different than it was.
Yeah.
And so it would have been easy for me not to grieve that experience, to stuff it. I'm going to move on. But I had to grieve the fact that my dream didn't work out.
Yeah.
And it would have been different than me just chucking the rock.
That's true.
And so through life, again, just because you process something doesn't mean you necessarily forget it. It's more of, if I process this, I don't have to carry the weight of it.
You've healed from it.
I have. And so I still remember the good rocks. I remember the bad ones, but they also don't weigh me down.
Right.
I don't have to exert extra energy every day to move the pack.
Exactly. And imagine how much more enjoyable the hike would be if your pack was lighter.
Exactly. And for anyone who has done long distance backpacking, that's what your whole experience is all about. You want to get the lightest pack possible. And so in life, we want the same thing. I think people think light pack, and then they think that you get less of an experience in your hike, in your journey. It's like, no, you get more actually.
Right.
Because you have more time and more energy to take in the greater things.
Yeah. It's funny because one of my friends, Jen, she's actually in Germany right now, and she was on Instagram, and she showed a picture, like, I saw her suitcase really quickly, and I noticed she's in Germany for 16 days. And her suitcase was like really small and very lightly packed, and I was shocked. And so I texted her and I was like, how in the world did you pack so light? Like, I need to learn how to do that, because I'm the girl that goes on like a 3-day trip for the weekend and I have a gigantic suitcase and not just a little one. And so for me, I think that's awesome that she can pack light, because that means she gets to bring home a bunch of wonderful souvenirs or all those different things. It's easier for her to travel, whereas I'm lugging this gigantic thing. I have to pay for a baggage claim or baggage fees. I can't have any room to buy anything. And then if I do want to buy something, I have to buy in an additional suitcase.
Yeah.
So I think it is good for us to travel light, like in all aspects of life.
And you just sort of pinpointed it as well, is that you get to choose what you bring back.
Exactly.
Where sometimes I feel like in life you don't get to choose what you bring back. And what I mean by that is we don't allow ourselves the ability to choose. We just tell ourselves, you know what, no, I've got to pick up this. You know, even if it doesn't mean anything to me, I have to take this souvenir.
Right.
It's not a souvenir.
We get to choose.
You know, is it a liability or is it an asset?
Is it going to help you on this hike, or is it going to hurt you?
Yep. And in some moments, in our own stubbornness, we think to ourselves, I'm just going to throw it in the pack, and I'll get to it when I get to it.
How bad can this really hurt me anyways?
How bad can it be?
How heavy can it be today? But it's like, no, if we keep it there and we don't ever address it or remove it, it will hurt us in the long run. It's going to come out other ways.
And so really building in this awareness, probably the hardest thing is the fact that your therapist might be able to pick up on it, your friends might be able to pick up on it, but the one that has the most awareness or the most cues is going to be yourself.
Yeah.
And so if you're feeling overwhelmed in life, if you are feeling like you're constantly running, you're going to need to ask yourself why. You know, I think...
like, what are you running from?
Exactly. I had a chance to go to the Evolution of Psychotherapy conference last year. And there was a great presentation on basically why humans are dying young.
Yeah.
And the sad reality is, when we look at whether it's wild animals or us as a wild animal, we have come as a society, whether it's global or national, whatever it is, as humans, as individuals, we end up having what's basically a constant sense of stress and fear.
That's true.
And so we're always in it. So, like, when people look at, like, well, gazelles don't drop from having heart attacks. Well, it's because in the moments they've got to run, when they have that fight or flight, they do it, and boom, you move on, right? The problem with us is we do this every day.
We're constantly fighting.
We have a constant stress level, and it's not good for our hearts.
No,
it's not good for
all.
our minds, because we are always in that heightened, gotta move, gotta move, gotta move. And so, if that is where you're at, please do yourself a favor and invest in yourself.
Absolutely. You cannot always have your sympathetic nervous system on. Like, it is so bad for you. It also affects your memory too in your brain. So aside from just like your heart too, it literally will like actually cause you to lose memory.
And then also create cognitive distortions, which lead to crazy narratives. So, Adam, can you break that down into what you mean? Basically, if you're in a constant height of panic and stress, and you're like, well, I can't trust anyone, so I've just got to keep on moving, then you don't build good quality relationships because you don't trust anyone.
Exactly.
And so you end up with a person that, I'm not going to trust anyone, it's always me, it's always been me. Well, guess why it's always you? Because that's what you put out there. Because at some point that worked for you.
Right. And we're not saying that it doesn't always work. Like, some of us have grown up in certain environments where that fight or flight has allowed us to survive, and we've become resilient and we've survived it. But at some point, like, it can be safe to unpack all those things and to kind of calm and not always be in this heightened state of tension and stress.
Yeah, it goes back to the whole thing of, are you going to unpack that box in your storage unit at home, or how about you got that pack on? You're not going to be right in the middle of the trail and dump it out on the ground,
Right.
but are you going to stop and camp for the evening later on? Maybe you process it then.
Right.
And so this is the thing. Defense mechanisms are defense mechanisms because they worked really well, and then they become strong narratives because they worked really well in the past. And then we get really frustrated when they don't work going forward.
Because life changes, people change, your relationships change, you change. And so things that we've used in the past isn't always going to work for our future or our current.
Exactly. And that's the biggest thing, is allowing that room for growth. Sometimes we won't allow ourselves to grow.
Right.
Because again, just because you have the pants from when you were 200 pounds or whatever, doesn't mean you want to get into the same pants. You are a different person.
Absolutely.
So you're not going to have the same interventions work for you in the past.
So then how would you, like, what would you suggest to people on, like, ways to unpack and unstuff their storage unit?
So this is always a hard one, because this always sounds like we're like in an infomercial.
Yeah, like a call to action.
Oh, yes.
This is what you should do.
So-
1, 2, 3.
So yeah, door number one, I will always say door number one is therapy.
Yes.
And the reason why is not because you're going to end up paying us. It's more of the idea of therapy is one of the safest places for you to process this. Because you get to guarantee that that individual that's listening to you isn't a part of your life for any other amount of time during that week. And people say, well, sometimes I don't like that. Well, no, it's actually an asset, because they aren't a friend. They have no secondary gain on where you go. The influence has a good therapist will have no reason to influence where you go with your life. Your life is completely your own. The second thing I would say is building a good social support group.
Absolutely.
I will say, for my fact, I'm blessed through having Judy, other friends who have, yes, they're clinicians, but they're awesome friends.
Yes. And we can text them at any, I mean, I'm sure, because we have some similar friends. It's just, we can text each other at any time.
And I still have a group from high school that are good, strong dudes that I will lean on when I need to. And you have to have this. But again, sometimes we feel, and it's like the biggest lie we tell ourselves is, I'll just deal this on my own.
I can do it. I'm strong.
I mean, it's like workout partners, right? You can buy a gym membership. You'll probably not go alone. But if you have a workout buddy,
accountability partner, absolutely,
you'll end up going to the freaking gym.
Yep.
It's the same thing with your mind. Sometimes you got to send the text. Let's all go out, have dinner. You know, I think that's a hysterical thing. Judy, I, and several of our clinical friends, we have been trying to go out and have dinner for at least 6 months. But you know what actually gives... I get joy either way when the text comes back around. Because it'll be like, okay, all right, we're going to go 3 weeks from now. Oh, that's Thanksgiving, or that's whatever.
Right.
Like, it always happens, but there is moments where you can take the joy and be like, okay, but we're thinking about it.
Yes, and we're at least thinking of each other. And at least we're reaching out saying that we need it. We haven't done it yet, but, like, we will.
Yes.
All of us that have been texting, we will.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, definitely, number 2 is that. Then 3 goes back to the storage unit. Create space for yourself.
Yeah.
Allow there to be space so that when life does hand you a box, you have room. You know?
And everyone processes it differently. Like, so if you're going to empty out your storage unit, like for me, I like to write and to journal. And so sometimes writing a blog or just journaling in general is really helpful. I think exercise is a great one. Sometimes I have like my best unstuffing when I'm exercising or driving or when people meditate, people pray. Like, it literally is, it doesn't matter how you want to unstuff it, but you need to do it somehow, whatever works for you. But putting it off and saying, I'll deal with it later, is not a form of stuffing. I mean, it's not a form of unstuffing. It is it's the actual way of stuffing.
Yeah.
So
You're not processing.
No, you're not.
you're only adding more weight to your emotional self.
Yeah.
So I hope that this podcast has been informational for you. I hope that you've gotten something out of it. I will definitely say it's something that I still continue to struggle with.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, if you do get a chance to read my blog, first, I really appreciate it, but second, know that I continue to struggle with this.
Yeah, me too. Even today, I was telling him, I was like, I'm so tired. Like, I think I'm emotionally stuffed. I don't know if I can do this podcast. I'm so exhausted. But that is actually doing this has actually been fairly therapeutic, like just talking about it, because it allows us to chat. But at least it gives me, okay, I need to pay attention to my body. And I need to make sure that I give myself time to process and to unstuff and, unpack some stuff this weekend. Because I can't function this way. It's not good for my students, my clients, my friendships, my relationships. And so this has been really helpful. Like reading your blog, I think, is why I wanted us to talk about this tonight instead of our original podcast idea, because I thought it was going to be really helpful. Because I related to it. I was like, that's totally me this week. So thank you for writing it.
Thank you for pushing me to talk about it. And I'll say from the other side, I wasn't necessarily ready to go right in verbalizing it, because as I'm sitting here talking to you, man, I'm processing in my head of like, oh man, maybe I didn't fully process certain things, and maybe I got to dig in. Mm-hmm. So again, be mindful and allowing yourself the time and space. And I think you nailed it a little bit earlier on the fact that your processing speed is different than everyone else's. Yeah. So whether it is meditation or it's surfing or whatever it is, don't be ashamed in that. Because that's probably something I also hear through clients and through friends of like, oh, my guilty pleasure is this, but it really works.
Yeah.
An individual that really calms down to HGTV House Hunters. That's freaking crazy.
That's my dad.
Oh, okay. Well, then
I
didn't talk to him, but
that
we know
UFC.
two people. So,
or the cooking channel.
Or the cooking channel. So, but again, your process is your process. Mm-hmm. Unpack how you can unpack. Yeah. But don't carry around the weight or fill up the space that you don't need. You are spending emotional currency to store stuff that you don't need anymore.
And you can spend that money on so many other things.
Exactly. When you have that emotional resource ready and life throws you something, or you want to do something, like I can think of also being on the other side of, yes, Monday through Thursday, I normally don't get home till 10 a.m. Or 10 p.m. I'm not pulling 24, it's 10 p.m. But, sometimes we forget that we need the emotional currency to go out on that fifth day, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe friends are like, hey, let's go see a movie, let's go do this. And you're just burnt.
Right.
But would you be burnt if you weren't carrying around that full pack? You didn't
enjoy it.
That storage unit to pay for? You might have the space.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. So thank you guys. I don't know, do we have any questions at all?
See.
I don't know.
I have really appreciated how many people have been on this thing.
Thank you, guys.
We've been watching you check in. That's awesome.
If you have any ideas about podcasts or you want to share, please feel free to contact us. We would love to share those, have you join us.
Yeah. No, I mean, George Garcia, he's a triple threat here. He's been checking in on all of ours, and we've appreciated it. He says hi. Jonathan George. Castro,
yay,
you're
George.
always killing it. Appreciate it. We got Brittany Gonzalez on here.
Oh, yeah, my old student.
Love this. I got Lindy Frisbee, longtime friend. Thank you for checking in. Mm-hmm. My wife says she likes this episode, probably because you're saying everything she already tells me. Oh, boy. If you ever want to pay attention to my Facebook, I do Husband Diaries.
Those are awesome. Those make my day.
It's literally all the times I've been stupid as a husband, even though I have a master's degree in marriage and family therapy. So we all have something to grow from. So I think we're going to call it. We've been on for, I think, an hour now.
Oh, no, that's like way longer than we intended. We're trying to keep these to half an hour, so sorry.
We're trying, but hey, if you are driving into work, we're hoping you have a wonderful time at work or wherever you're catching
Friday.
us. Woo-hoo-hoo!
Almost weekend.
I can't wait.
Me too. Thank you guys so much. Have a great night.
See you guys.
Bye.